Influencers and other online entrepreneurs took notice not only of Holiday's success, but also of how his brand was infiltrating the professional sports world. Copies of "The Obstacle is the Way" became as common in US pro locker rooms as sneakers and ice packs.
If you're, for instance, a member of a competitive sports team, sure, what people call life hacks are going to be useful. Yes, they are. But that's not Stoicism. Those are just the techniques.
Then you get these entrepreneurs who are millionaires and billionaires. And that's massive high social proof saying Stoicism is fantastic. And so that spreads out. People say, well, if this NFL quarterback is using it, that sounds good to me. So men look to very successful men and say, what makes them great? Is there anything that I could take on board?
Gwyneth Paltrow hired a kind of interior designer or something to advise her on what books to have on her bookshelf. Not to read, but what ones to have in our living room, and they recommended Stoicism because it's trending. So that's how trendy Stoicism has suddenly become.
Even the mainstream media was getting in on the act. More and more people were coming to the same conclusion. If Stoicism was good enough for pro athletes, Bill Gates, and even Hollywood actors like Michael Douglas, maybe it was the missing cheat code separating regular guys from achieving everything they wanted in life.
So we have a lot of authors now, podcasters and YouTubers and so on and so forth, who tell you things like, oh, you want to succeed at sports, embrace Stoicism. You want to become rich, embrace Stoicism. You want to be successful, embrace Stoicism. The Stoics will be stunned by all of this, because all of those things I just mentioned, success, money, fame, and so on and so forth, are classified by the ancient Stoics as indifference, meaning that they do not make a difference, literally, to the only thing that matters, which is your character.
As awareness of Stoicism grew, it became even more watered down, turned into a bunch of maxims and life hacks to fix whatever life problem you had.
The so-called life hacks are techniques that are useful in order to practice Stoicism, to incorporate Stoicism as a way of life. Okay? But that's all they are. They are crutches, in a sense. They're kind of useful techniques that allows you to stay on track. But the important thing is the track, not the technique.
I mean, life hack's an odd phrase, isn't it? It's not really one that the Stoics would use. Other Stoic life hacks.
It's very accessible, it's very DIY, and that makes it kind of attractive in the age of the internet.
Somewhere along the way, the true message of this ancient Greek philosophy got drowned in the sea of life hacks. When it washed up on the other side, it was a mutant offspring, something so far removed from its origins that if Marcus Aurelius was alive today, he wouldn't even recognize it. Stoicism became Groicism.
Do I remember when the manosphere started to become a thing? In all honesty, I was a kind of Johnny-come-lately. Other people were saying, are you concerned about the Stoicism being hijacked by people in the manosphere that are distorting it? And my initial reaction was, what are you talking about? I've no idea. I've never seen that. And I was surrounded by people that are interested in Stoicism. I organised and spoke at many conferences. I thought I had my finger on the pulse of how Stoicism was being appreciated, but I didn't know about the Red Pill movement and the manosphere until much later, really. Although I guess in retrospect, I'd seen traces of it. So I'd seen books earlier and articles by people who portrayed Stoicism in a way that seemed quite odd to me.
It was around the time that my book, Philosophy for Life and Other Dangerous Situations, came out, which was in 2012. And I got contacted and invited to be on a podcast to talk about Stoicism. And I looked into the podcast, and it was a white supremacist, Southern secessionist podcast. One of the podcast hosts was actually one of the organizers of the Charlottesville white supremacy march. And I was astounded. I was like, how did these people get into Stoicism?
Groicism, in its simplest terms, is Stoicism that has been hijacked and manipulated to fit the narrative of the manosphere and red pill community. It's Stoicism for the bros. For the uninitiated, some quick background on the quote-unquote manosphere. a term, by the way, coined by a former porn star known as Ian Ironwood. The manosphere is synonymous with the red pill mentality borrowed from the Matrix movies, a mentality notably disavowed by the people who actually made the Matrix. Conceived as backlash against the general perception that feminism had gone out of control and that girls were no longer going wild in the way that real men could get behind. The manosphere, as the name implies, became a catch-all term for a network of male-centric online communities, everything from alpha males and pickup artists to involuntary celibates, aka incels, to the alt-right, the far-right, and beyond. For reasons we'll do our best to explain, Stoicism, or rather, Broicism, is now running rampant in the manosphere, causing a surprisingly contagious philosophical brain flu. Just listen to Taylor's call with a supposed Stoic leader.
All right, so it's been about 4 days since I purchased this Stoic course on Fiverr, but so far I'm getting ghosted and I paid like $50 for it, so yeah. So after nearly a week, my Stoic coach decided to finally respond.
Your fat, Miss Johanna, for example. There is no reason to feel sad. Why are you telling me this? People are calling me fat. Yeah, but you are fat. And I'm gonna ask you another thing, Miss Johanna. Do you wanna continue to be fat or no? No. Okay. Can you take control of your diet? Hey, it's hard, it's this, it's that. Yeah, but can you actually do it? For example, you see a woman getting raped and you are a Stoic. Like, you can pass through unfazed if you want, because that's your choice.
And although the rest of our crew didn't experience the same terrible lectures, you can tell that you really can't buy Stoic teachings.
This is my day 3 check-in. I'm doing the Ryan Holiday dailystoic.com Taming Your Temper daily guide to controlling your anger. Every day I get something to read, I get a video to watch, and I get a physical activity that I'm supposed to do. Yesterday, day 2, the instruction was to look in a mirror and make angry faces. Personally, I would say my experience looking in a mirror, mean mugging, felt more silly than anything. Today on day 3, the instruction was drawing on the life lessons of the Adam Sandler movie, Happy Gilmore, was to learn to find your happy space. I would say I was expecting at this point something a little bit more substantial from Stoic content, but it's only day 3. We got 4 more days to go.
It's currently day 3, and after watching the videos on the first day, I started reading the classics. I've been reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and it's honestly such an eye-opener. And the best part about it is that the book is in the public domain. You don't have to spend a penny to buy it. There are also writings from Epicurus, Seneca, and even Zeno, so you can learn directly from the founding fathers of Stoicism without paying for any course or anything at all.
Alright, so it's been 3 days now, and I made it a little routine for myself. So every day I'm picking a card, reading the quotes. They're mostly from Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, which I have to say has been a very interesting way to just, take 10 minutes a day. Doesn't take too much of your time, and still a good way to change your perspective a little bit. So let's continue.
So if we had to define Broicism in its pillars, so to speak, yeah, I would agree that one of them is certainly the acknowledgement that we only control our intentions and the actions that we initiate, not the outcomes. And that is, in fact, consistent with Stoicism. That's real Stoicism. That's what Epictetus says right at the beginning of his manual for a good life. And that actually is a very healthy way of thinking about things. That's also the basis of certain versions of cognitive behavioral therapy. Rational emotive behavioral therapy, for instance, studied by Albert Ellis, which is a type of CBT, starts out precisely with that kind of acknowledgement. So that's fine. But the second thing that the Broics seem to believe is that they need to suppress emotions, that they cannot afford to be seen as weak. That is not Stoicism. That's a fundamental distortion of Stoicism.
Too many men are being conditioned to accept weakness.
Some of my Stoic writings are used or misused in the manosphere and by the Broics, the red pill Stoics. And I've seen that, and it's like you cringe and you say, oh, I guess I should explain myself better the next time.
Unlike genuine Stoicism, Broicism is rarely presented as a process for becoming your best self. Like a get-rich-quick scheme or a workout routine promising instant abs, Stoicism is all about results. Once unleashed in the manosphere, Stoicism became a one-size-fits-all answer to all questions of the alpha male variety.
But like everything, it becomes trendy, and now what you'll find is more people become interested in Stoicism because they've read articles or read podcasts than because they've actually read the Stoics. So with that, there's a risk of dilution, as many of the articles contain AI-generated content, fake quotes and things like that. So you're definitely now entering a phase where you get a lot of people becoming attracted to Stoicism, but getting a really inaccurate representation of what the Stoics said.
This is the unpredictability of how culture evolves, and memes evolve in unpredictable directions. Someone wrote a book about using Stoic techniques to win a poker championship. There was a Stoic dating app.
Let's take money. So Stoicism, in that sense, with the dollar sign or the Silicon Valley Stoicism, is a distortion because it replaces the actual Stoic value, which is your character, your judgment, with things that the Stoics themselves were very clear in saying they don't matter.
Stoicism invariably presents overly simple solutions to complicated questions. One of the perks of Stoicism is that it can be easily twisted into just about anything an opportunistic influencer wants it to be. It's an example of the Barnum effect, a psychological phenomenon in which vague and general audience appears to be tailored to a specific individual, when in reality it applies to a wide range of people. It's like horoscopes, fortune tellers, psychics. In other words, charlatans who make a living preying on people's fears and insecurities by telling them vague nonsense masqueraded as knowledgeable insights. What prompted us to make this video in the first place is that we saw a resurgence in the popularity of our Stoicism video. When I first made the video, it did really well, don't get me wrong. But in the past year or two, it's gotten way more popular than I could have thought. In fact, right now it's the most popular video on the channel with over 11 million views. The problem is that the more popular the video got, the more comments you started to see from people who seemed to know more about Stoicism than Stoicism. People who wanted to learn how to get rich the Stoic way, how to get over a breakup the Stoic way, how to turn off their emotions the Stoic way. And if you're watching this and you had those questions, I want you to know I'm not judging you at all for that. I've had these questions myself, especially when I was younger. The sad reality of today's world is that there's many young men who don't have a steady adult male role model in their lives. So when male influencers who have the money, the women, the power, and the luxury these young boys dream of, it's easy to see why they get drawn to them. And the message of Stoicism is also very attractive to these young boys. The promise that you can will yourself to become completely self-reliant, powerful, and wealthy is obviously appealing.
Because young men are often quite vulnerable and insecure about their masculinity. So they tend to look towards things that they think can fill that gap in their life. And if they think being tough and having a stiff upper lip is symbolic of masculinity, that's something that they can become quite attached to as a philosophy of life. And they associate it, rightly or wrongly, with Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius and guys like that.
Men are not into therapy culture, but they're very into Stoicism. And Stoicism is basically therapy with gladiator metaphors. Stoicism, the ethos is quite tough love. If you read Epictetus, it's quite tough love. And I think that appeals to men.
Jules Evans believes the modern world has unwittingly created an opening for Stoicism to move in.
I think Western culture has moved to a different kind of model, which is blame your environment. If you're feeling bad, blame your environment. Blame your economy, blame the actions of other people, blame systemic injustice of some form or other. In other words, you are right to be miserable. That's that's a very caricatured version of a certain type of left-wing argument. If you make an extreme version of that argument, you are going to leave a real opening for people on the right to just put forward this very basic idea and win followers. The very basic idea being, stop blaming other people, stop behaving like a victim, stop complaining all the time, that's weakness.
In fairness, we do live in challenging times. People are looking for answers and they don't have much faith in institutions like the church or government to catch them if they fall. there's a growing sense that it's every man for himself. Some have argued that as organized religion has faded, people are looking elsewhere for a new rulebook to guide them. And just like the Bible, Stoicism can be whatever you want it to be. It's been widely noted that many people who believe in the divine authority of the Bible have never actually read the Bible. In the same way, many devotees of Stoicism are too busy scrolling through their phone to actually go read classic Stoic texts. That means manosphere influencers can claim whatever they say has roots in genuine Stoicism, and the odds are none of their followers will call BS. Although one does have to wonder, if Stoicism as it's packaged and sold in the manosphere isn't actual Stoicism, why even bother calling it that?
I think there has always been an audience for a certain kind of male self-help, which is maybe less geared towards healing and relationships and more geared towards like success and being a man of power, being a kind of great man. And that kind of genre, I think has always kind of looked for older traditional sources of advice, whether that's, samurais or whatever.
There is a widespread problem of this kind. Not only certain communities embrace anti-intellectualism and embrace certain values that are, shall we say, questionable at least, but they want to use cultural references, which is kind of ironic, considering that these communities tend to be anti-intellectual. But they feel the need to have some kind of pedigree that justifies their position. Once a tradition has established itself as respectable for whatever reasons, once it has become particularly sufficiently popular that people recognize it and they say, oh yeah, Marcus Aurelius, oh yeah, this guy or that guy, then inevitably somebody tries to co-opt it.
So if it's not the actual genuine content of the philosophy, what is it about the brand of Stoicism that makes it so sellable in the manosphere? For starters, I think we can agree that the word just sounds kind of cool. In common parlance, being stoic means the strong, silent type. Needless to say, this image plays well to the would-be alpha males. The problem is that being stoic and stoicism are two very different things.
There is a difference between what sometimes we call capital S Stoicism and little s Stoicism. So when you hear somebody saying, "Oh, that person is being really stoic," usually they don't mean he's following the philosophy of Stoicism. What they mean is, oh, he's sporting a stiff upper lip. He's not reacting to the situation. He's trying to control his emotions. He's trying to sort of tough it out, basically. That is a psychological attitude, which turns out there is now fairly good empirical evidence is actually damaging. It's not a good thing. It's bad for your mental health if you try to be stoic with a little s. Stoicism with a capital S, on the other hand, is the philosophy.
Although the term Stoicism is often misused and misinterpreted, the basic principles of capital S Stoicism are fairly easy to grasp, at least compared to other philosophies. Ancient Stoicism lends itself to easy-to-remember and highly marketable catchphrases. The phrase memento mori, a reminder of man's mortality, literally meaning remember you must die, appears to be one of Ryan Holiday's best-selling medallions. But still, why has Stoicism succeeded where other formerly trending philosophies, like, say, Buddhism, have not? It can't just be because people think Roman centurions look awesome and that 300 was a sick movie, can it?
So why are people in the manosphere drawn to Roman stuff? Like why? Like that? It's like that trend recently about how often do men think about the Roman Empire? That kind of trope. Is there something about it? Yeah, like, gosh, I mean, Rome was a militaristic society. It permeated Roman culture and symbolism. It was autocratic. And I think if you're going to exploit adolescent boys, which is something people have done throughout history, the go-to way of doing that is to accuse them of being unmanly and drive that message home to them and then offer to solve it for them. And then, you're going to refer to autocratic societies and strong leaders or despots.
Perhaps Stoicism outshines Eastern philosophies because Buddhism, Taoism, and the like have been tainted by associations with 1960s counterculture and its modern offshoot, the touchy-feely New Age movement. It's further been suggested that the chauvinism that taints so much of the red pill alt-right movements is also at play, positioning themselves in opposition to a caricature of woke liberals bowing to the exotic superiority of Eastern wisdom. Western chauvinists insist that the great forces which have civilized and elevated man uniformly originated in the West. Perhaps that has helped drive the rise of Stoicism? Donald Robertson disagrees.
In my own case, I immersed myself in reading Asian philosophy when I was a young guy. I read Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, Tao Te Ching, Wei Shang Su, like all that kind of stuff, right? And I loved it. But then when I found Stoicism, I connected with it in a different way. I don't think because I idolized Western chauvinistic value, but because I had a kind of what I would describe as a deja vu experience. I thought, some of this stuff seems kind of familiar to me. You know, I've heard some of these concepts in our own culture.
Other observers are more skeptical.
You can see that kind of there's also kind of traditionalist school or kind of camp who say like we should go back to the, Western civilization's the best. We should teach like the greats. We should teach the Stoics in high school and in universities and so on. That kind of chauvinism, and you even see kind of Stoicism being taken up by white supremacists.
It definitely doesn't hinder Stoicism's appeal that one of the leading names in Stoicism is Marcus Aurelius. If you're going to absorb the life lessons of an ancient philosopher, might as well think like a Roman emperor, right?
If I'd written a book about how to think like a Roman slave, and it was about Epictetus, maybe we can test this one day, but I don't think anyone would have read it. I don't think it would have sold many copies. I think a lot of people picked up How to Think Like a Roman Emperor because they thought Roman emperors seem manly and powerful.
In reality, Marcus Aurelius was a skilled military and political leader, but between running an empire and writing his meditations, he probably didn't have as much time to hit the gym as it sometimes appears in the manosphere. In thumbnails for videos touting the virtues of Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius often appears to be on some heavy-duty steroids, and come to think of it, the beard looks suspiciously modern too.
Yeah, maybe I'm guilty of a kind of bait and switch strategy here, but unapologetically, right? So we kind of reel them in because they want to be like a Roman emperor, a powerful autocratic figure. And then when they get there, they realize it's different at the top, and Marcus Aurelius wasn't particularly autocratic, because he'd seen through the illusions of power. And actually I think that's a very compelling strategy.
Clearly whoever's in charge of the algorithms on YouTube and social media knows this stuff sells. Click on a bunch of Stoicism links for a couple days, say, because you're researching on a documentary on the subject, and in our experience, your suggestions feed will be dead for weeks. And it's not an accident. The stuff sells. Powers that be at YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok know it, and they're all feeding in on it. So what exactly does Stoicism get wrong about Stoicism? For starters, calling Stoicism a Greek philosophy. That might get you some funny looks in Greece.
Well, there's kind of interesting trivia about the early history of Stoicism. Lots of things, but probably one of the main one is occasionally you'll hear people criticizing Stoicism as being a philosophy of dead, rich, white dudes or something like that, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Certainly Marcus Aurelius is a dead, rich, white dude, but he was the last famous Stoic. The founder of Stoicism was not even Greek, he was Phoenician. So the Greeks saw him as a foreign immigrant. And so Stoicism was seen as an immigrant philosophy, I believe, to begin with.
And as for the whole stiff upper lip, strong, silent type thing,
it is not the case that ancient Stoics don't talk about their emotions. In fact, as the philosopher Martha Nussbaum said to me, no one talks about their emotions more than the Stoics in ancient philosophy. The Stoics, it's all they talk about, emotions.
Let's face it, no philosophy makes it into the mainstream without getting watered down and distorted in the process. And let's not even get started on religion, but nowadays, some online alpha male influencers have drunk so much Kool-Aid that they've convinced themselves that they're the actual experts.
I've been told, and some of my colleagues have been told several times by red pill so-called Stoics, that we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to the interpretation of the Stoic text, as opposed to people who just read one translation in English of that book and they think that they understood it. It's a very interesting phenomenon psychologically, sociologically, in and of itself.
The differences between Stoicism and Broicism. Let's start here. To the Stoics, both ancient and modern, like Admiral Stockdale, obstacles were just that. Obstacles. Life was full of them, and to think that you could will reality to change was setting yourself up for failure and unhappiness. You needed to accept the inevitable and train yourself accordingly. In more modern parlance, you needed to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. But to Ryan Holiday, to quote the title of his book, the obstacle is the way. The way to what? In the world of Broicism, pretty much anything you think will make you happy.